Hello and welcome to some r/MaliciousCompliance, brought to you by Reddit Recreations. Let's get right into it. The first post is from Petite Peach Pep and says, I should talk to HR about leave if I'm legitimately having trouble at work 1 week before my due date. Yeah, sure thing, boss. So this happened last year. I, female 31, was 1 week away from my due date and was working full-time in a school administration position. At this time, I had the capability to work from home if needed. Example, I was too sick to come into work, catch up on extra work, unable to secure daycare for my child, etc. So when I accepted the position prior to my pregnancy, I was told by my boss, let's call her Ronnie, that it was very flexible as long as I got my hours in. I very rarely worked from home and typically only did so for an hour or two in the morning if it was needed later on in order to work before the OB/GYN appointments, as it was a long commute between work and office. However, I was told by Ronnie after accepting the position to try and limit work from home to 2 days a month, which, fine. At this point, I was well under since I was only working an hour or two or maybe twice a month and only once a month before that. Being so close to my due date, I was experiencing physical hardships that made me working on the site more and more difficult, such as dizzy spells, a pulled tendon in my foot and severe back pain. I was also scared of potentially going into labour while at work, with it being so far away from the hospital my OB/GYN delivers at. To top that all off, my co-workers started asking more invasive questions about my pregnancy that made me uncomfortable. All in all, it was just not a fun time. I explained all of this in an email to Ronnie and asked for her permission to almost exclusively work from home until I go into labour. I said I thought it would be reasonable accommodation and I work really well from home. Ronnie responded a couple days later denying my request to work from home at all and said I need to be there since we would be starting some of our busiest work in a couple of months, which I would be gone for on maternity leave anyways, so I'm not really sure why she brought it up. But I could talk to HR about leave options if I am truly having trouble working. By the way, it is illegal in my state to require an employee to take leave if there's a reasonable accommodation that can be made instead. Cue malicious compliance. I immediately went to HR and did just that. We talked about options and found out I could start my leave the very next day and still be paid state mandatory leave pay for the extra time. I informed Ronnie that I would be out starting the next day as I needed to take care of myself. She said, I understand you need to do what's best for you, but you need to understand that I need to do what's best for the team. So yeah, everything I normally managed basically fell apart in my absence, as the other people on the team weren't qualified to do the work and kept taking time off leading up to my due date instead of learning the basics while I was still there to teach them. I left detailed procedure notes and workflow lists, but I later found out that Ronnie had to pick up all the extra work and a lot of it never got done since she just didn't have the time. But it was best for the team, right boss? Sucks to suck. Good for you, OP. I'm glad you got some well-deserved paid time off to rest before the baby got here. Thank you. It ended up being extremely valuable time off for sure. For 2 weeks, then we had to induce, lol. I need to do what's best for the team. And apparently it's better to not have you work at all than have you work from home. Management can be so effing stupid. Exactly. What's the problem? This person has a proven track record of working efficiently from home, so when they're pregnant, let them work from home. What's the problem? Oh dear. And well done, you messed it all up yourself. Way to go, boss. I've never ever understood this. It applies to all kinds of temporary impairments, not just pregnancy. When a chemically sensitive employee was denied remote work the day after the carpet was to be shampooed. When an employee using crutches was denied a teaching schedule with rooms near one another for 3 weeks. Why? She's on crutches, help her out. When a pregnant employee wants to bring in a personal recliner chair to elevate her feet periodically. And they're all told to take sick leave instead. Like the company or the students don't deserve the high quality work of those employees. And of course, the employer would be screwed if they actually did all take that leave. I work from home some days I need to go into the office. If I'm too sick to go into the office, I will tell them, like, I'm too sick to go into the office, but I can still work from home. They say, no, if you can't come into the office, you must take a sick day. So, okay, fine. I guess I will not work today. The next post comes from DT20. You want me to work 0 overtime? Yeah, sure thing, boss. So, some context. I work as a manager in a call centre and I am nowhere near the phones. I generally don't interact with the customers at all. Rather, I'm a knowledge repository for my staff and I handle the communication between our teams and the client company which we provide support for. We are a technical support team, not a sales or order support, and the devices which we support are very complex customer electronics. Most of our support time goes to professional installers and we rarely speak to customers firsthand. In short, my job is to know our policies like the back of my hand and to know the products we support better than anyone except the designers who engineered them. A secondary part of my job is to coordinate our online chat team, which is generally pretty hands-off, other than right at the shift end, when I generally jump in to monitor any active chats and make sure they close up quickly. I don't want to keep my guys here any longer than necessary. They like it better and it cuts down on overtime hours for the entire line of business by quite a lot. This means I generally rack up 15 to 20 minutes of overtime a day, though some days it can be as little as 0 and others as much as an hour. My direct boss knows all about this and is genuinely all for it. One day, however, the guy who is in charge of all the support teams, we work with many brands, sent out a memo that management should never be getting overtime. I brought this up with my boss as it would seriously impact my team. So they arranged a meeting with the big boss. Big boss proceeds to tell my boss that no, I cannot rack up any overtime hours. I get out at a reasonable time every day. I have 0 issue with this. So the next Monday, I log out right when my shift ends. Turns out 3 of my guys were there for an extra hour with last minute chats. Tuesday, nearly the same story. This continues all the way throughout the week. We are bleeding overtime hours for support staff, with most of my team getting nearly an hour of overtime per day. This goes on for a pay period when Big Boss comes back and tells us we were told to reduce overtime hours and that we had somehow racked up even more than we had before. My boss backed me up and told the Big Boss that no, we were told to reduce management overtime hours and that I had indeed not racked up any overtime. Big Boss asks why overtime hours increased and I mentioned I stayed to make sure my team had the support they needed to get out as early as possible. Big Boss goes, well, that makes sense. Keep doing that, but add any overtime to your Friday lunch so you don't rack up overtime. I explain that I can do this, but will still probably get a bit of overtime on Fridays since the end of the shift is obviously after lunch. Again, cool. Long lunches are nice. That works well for a few weeks, and I am making sure I zero out my overtime. But I knew it was only a matter of time before they regretted doing any of this. We are approaching the busy season and getting more and more long chats and calls. I made sure to get Big Boss to email and CC me and my boss this instruction directly. Yes, always get it in writing. These stories can always flip on a dime. You have these good stories of revenge, and the only difference is they got it in writing, whereas you can have the opposite story, which is just a sad tale of someone getting screwed over, and the only difference is they didn't get an email. So always get it in writing. And if you're doing something and someone asks for you to give that in writing, just take a step back for a minute and think, am I being stupid here? Sure enough, a few weeks later, Monday, I'm there for a whopping hour and 30 minutes trying to get one guy out the door. Tuesday for an hour, Wednesday for an hour 15, and to top it off, 2 whole hours on Thursday. It was a terrible week for the last minute chats. I tally up my makeup time for my lunch, 5 hours and 45 minutes, plus an hour for my normal lunch break. I normally worked 4 hours, 1 hour lunch, then another 4 hours. So that Friday, I came in and explained the situation to my boss. He was cool with me working for only 2 hours and 15 minutes the whole day because I was doing exactly what the Big Boss said to do. So, an hour into my shift, I go on my 6-hour and 45-minute lunch. While I'm enjoying my most of day siesta, the entire line of business is burning down. Chat is so busy, we have people waiting 30 minutes to speak with someone. Calls are so busy, we have 15 calls waiting. On days like this, I normally jump in the queues as I do not need to document every case like our tier 1s have to, and I'm very good at my job. I can usually knock out a 10, 15, 20 minute call in a tier 1 in about 5 minutes or less. I can easily handle 4 to 5 chats at one time, seriously taking a load off the team. Now, I alone could not save this shift. No way. We were due for a hiring class and we're working on onboarding new tier 1s at the time. But man, does it look bad to the client when one of your key partners is absent all but 2 hours and 15 minutes of the busiest ever day for our LOB. I get back in, settle down at my desk right as the rush is clearing up. The damage was already done, and we were manageable for the rest of the day. Right at the end of my shift, I look and notice there is no one on a chat and no queue. So I immediately log out and thank my team for working hard that day. And Monday comes, time for the fallout. I get to meet with the client, big boss, and my boss for our weekly meeting. The client is furious about how on Friday, one of our best assets was on a super long lunch break, and big boss puts me on the spot and asks why that was. My response was rehearsed. According to company policy, established and agreed upon, date we met with the big boss, I am not to accrue overtime hours. Any hours over 8 worked within the work week must be made up during my lunch breaks on Fridays. Big boss began denying it. That's when my boss stepped in and was like, wait, I got an email about this. He pulls up the email big boss sent and shares it on the screen in the meeting. Yes. Oh god. So it's one thing to say you've got an email. Second, here's the evidence. Exhibit A. Right on the screen. I love this boss. I love this middle manager boss. It's nice to have one that actually backed you up for once. This guy, he's good. I hope he goes far. What a legend. The client is pissed, and the corporate rep begins ripping Big Boss a new one on the phone. After ripping into Big Boss, the corp rep speaks to me, telling me to accrue as many hours as I needed to make sure my job is done, and that if my company wants to retain this line of business, Big Boss is not to interfere with my generally very successful management without consulting them and myself. Since then, Big Boss has continued to try to interfere and change how I run my line. Oh my god. However, every time so far, the corporate rep has had my back. They're extremely happy with my work and know I do a great job. Hell, they even pushed through a large raise for me when Big Boss was blocking my boss's attempt to get me more money. Oh, what is wrong with this boss? Why do you hate productivity? Why do you hate your best workers? What are you doing here? Trying to block a raise for him when he's the one saving your ass? He's running everything so efficiently, he's using minimal overtime, getting everything done, and you're trying to block that. And then when there's more overtime, you're noticing that your decision has made everything go wrong. And instead of reversing your decision, you double down. There's too many people like this in the world, man. Well, how do you become the big boss when you are this stupid? Too long didn't read. Big Boss told me not to get any overtime hours and make up the extra time on Friday lunch. Had a 6-hour, 45-minute Friday lunch. Client got annoyed at Big Boss and has now given me considerably more freedom in how my team operates. Let's look at the comments and see what they think. You need to look at getting a job at corporate place unless they get Big Boss fired. Big Boss will be gunning for you. Best of luck. Big Boss will probably be gunning for both OP and his boss now. Hey client, I'm sorry, but today was my last day. Big Boss fired me. Client. Hi Big Boss, client here. Cancel our contract immediately as you have gutted the support line. Okay, thanks, bye. I doubt the Big Boss will risk it, if they are reasonably intelligent. It seems like the ego is much higher than the intelligence, so you never know. You are taking money out of the Big Boss's bonus checks. That's why he's trying to kill your overtime. But I'm guessing that the client knows this too, and will make sure Big Boss doesn't get it one way or another after how badly he screwed things up. They followed all the rules, got it in writing, and your boss backed you up to boot. Awesome. And the client too. Yeah, I mean, we see too many stories where the boss is fighting against you, and it's still the boss fighting against you, but you do have another boss in your corner backing you up. You love to see it. Hats off to you, OP. Very well played, and I hope you enjoyed your massive lunch break. 6-hour lunch break, that's crazy. Well, yes, I am going to leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. This has been some Malicious Compliance, brought to you by Reddit Recreations, your home for some daily Reddit videos. Now, I put out new Reddit videos every single day, so do not forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again next time.